Welcome everybody, this is General Microsoft 365 Development Special Interest Course. It is bi-weekly sync. It is June 11th, 2020. We do have a busy agenda again. So we're going to talk about quick updates, one slide updates on the open source projects. I have some news before that one, just to recap on where we are and what's actually happening, and some teasers which are coming pretty soon. And then we have 3 demos coming out. So we're trying to speed up again the intro in 15 minutes and then move to the demos to give them 15 minutes each. Hopefully we can figure out the technical issues which we seem to be experiencing, but let's see how this goes. Now, quick update on the opportunities to participate with the community. Not going to spend too much time in here trying to catch up. But key point here is that try to be active. If you're interested on speaking in these sessions, please let us know. We do welcome any community members to do live demos in here, and showing your learnings. Whatever you're showing doesn't have to be open source. It might be a learning based on a design or an approach which you've taken. And please remember to be active in the GitHub and provide us feedback. Now, this is all the assets and different locations what we have. There's so many stuff happening. And the key point here to remember is that if you go AKMS M365 PnP, the last URL on the slides, you can actually access all of this stuff from one single location. So you can find the sample galleries, you can find the initiatives, the projects, and open source stuff, and the videos from one single location. Now, if you're not super familiar with the GitHub, there's a growing interest on doing this, which is great, and it's awesome to see the interest in here. And there's a lot of other people who are not super familiar with GitHub either. And that means that we need to help you. So there is now multiple multiple training sessions coming in June. The first time contributor session related on the code, and then the community doc sessions as well, so contributing only as an articles to this in the GitHub or in the docs.microsoft.com. So if you're not super familiar with GitHub, you want to get confident on, you know that what you're doing, these are instructor-led sessions led by David Warner and Hugo Bernier to help you to learn how to use GitHub. So again, then start contributing in open source, not just only on our open source stuff, but in general in GitHub, and that's really cool. So this is really nice sessions on getting started on this area. Now, this is a teaser which we're going to release hopefully next week, related on well, depending on a few timelines and resource discussions which we're having. We have the videos and the training package already pretty much ready to go, but we will release a really cool set of Yo Teams training videos, 8 videos, basically covering all of the basics on getting started on using Yo Teams. We have 8 different MVPs. Well, actually Bob German is a Microsoft employee who have participated and created these videos. So really cool set of videos are coming, and they will be released in the YouTube channel. There will be a blog post, obviously, announcing this one hopefully Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week. So just a teaser of what's coming on this area. Microsoft Teams obviously being a big focus area and interest area in general in Microsoft, which impacts, well, it impacts for us, but that's obviously pretty obvious. It's not impacting. We built Microsoft Teams usage through our channels as well. One also additional teaser related on that one. So this one, I was planning to get it out already today, but it seems to be that it's going to be delayed until tomorrow. We will finally have an official statement, documentation, and also a video how to embed SharePoint pages in Microsoft Teams, including all of the limitations. We call them out and explain what is being supported, what is being not supported. In the documentation, we'll do it in a way that it actually works in the mobile and in the desktop articles, so desktop client for Teams. So you can actually start using the scenarios where we embed SharePoint modern portals directly in the Microsoft Teams, which we know that people have been doing, but we explicitly now call out that to be supported as well. So really cool from a Teams and SharePoint integration perspective. I also wanted to spend really quickly, just recap on this one. If you missed on Tuesday, we talked about the roadmap of SharePoint Framework 1.11 coming quite soon. Plan to come out in early July right now. roughly, if we can get everything validated. And there will be improved Microsoft Graph API, CSOM.NET Standard coming hopefully already as soon as potentially as next week, depending again on small technical nuances which we need to figure out. So that's coming really, really, really soon as well. The Microsoft Teams is a big focus area for us in general, and then more branding settings in the portals are coming as well. Now let's go to the PnP CSOM Core library and let's see if Bert can actually unmute himself.
Well, I stayed unmute. I don't
there we go. There we go.
Anymore.
Exactly. That's clever.
So, yep. All right. PnP CSOM Core library. The June release is out. What are the big changes? I think an important one is Authentication Manager, which is now disposable. Why is this important? If you're using Authentication Manager, especially in cloud scenarios like in Azure Functions, for example, combined with requesting access tokens to Azure ACS or Azure AD, then we kind of created a thread to invalidate the token. Now that thread never died, essentially leading up to like thousands of threads in your Azure function, which eventually could kill the function. So that's being fixed. So just do the using with iDisposable. Then there's other improvements, especially around graph methods, new methods, new additions to methods. And the last one I want to kind of highlight here is probably a topic pages for Cortex. So if you in the future you will be able to kind of when you use Cortex to export and import those pages like any other pages that we have in SharePoint Online. And a ton of small changes, small fixes have been done actually. So there's lots of things that happened in this release. Looking forward, there will be a V4, but actually let's skip that. I will talk about that in the upcoming demo of Vesa. So let's just directly go to PowerShell.
Cool.
PowerShell, like this is an amazing number. Like for the customers that we have memory for, we have 1 billion command-line executions in May. Like, just can you imagine that 1 billion PowerShell command lists that were executed in May? It's kind of a crazy number. That being said, still things to do in PowerShell. So there was a lot of refactoring and a lot of PRs were merged in this month. So I think the list went down from 30 plus PRs to 3 or 4. So that's a lot of work done. And then big shout out, thank you to Koen Zomers, who has been doing a ton of work to kind of enable those PRs to be merged. There's too many individual fixes, Vesa, to really highlight all of them because it's just a massive update that we did.
Yep. Absolutely. Now, let's go to the modernization tooling. Bert, you can talk about this one as well.
Yep. June release for page transformation, so the tech that takes classic pages and builds modern pages from that one. Actually, no changes, meaning no bugs, no features needed, so all good there. For the scanner, we did release 2.12, actually yesterday, if I'm mistaken, the day before, which have some improvements around workflow and infopad reports. And a new thing is like, just when you create private channels and teams, you get site collections. Those site collections, well, there can be a ton of them, and they should not be scanned because they are modern, they're ready, nothing to do. You don't want to update those, so we skip those. And I think it's kind of a bit of a maintenance release actually then, the 2.12. From usage perspective, pretty stable usage. So we see around 80 to 90,000 pages being consumed a month, mainly publishing pages, but wiki pages catching up. And if you're still using Delve blog pages, this will be one of the last times that I have to remind people about this, but they will go away in July timeframe. So take action now if you still need them.
Cool.
All right.
The latest version of the Yo teams is a 2.15 preview 2, and things are evolving nicely. The May 2020 absolutely best month ever, so you can actually see the growth on the right side, and the growth keeps on skyrocketing also in June as well. So those 1,922 downloads of teams, and first time over ever more than 4,000 generated projects in the last 90 days. So that's pretty cool from that perspective. So adoption is growing on the team side. Now, what's going to happen next? There's going to be 2.16 version, which will be a maintenance release on that one. And then there's a more significant changes coming into version 3. There's an ongoing discussions on that one in the GitHub if you are interested on helping. And there's obviously we're looking into people who would be interested on helping improving the Yo teams and the generator and testing. And there's already a great set of issues tagged in GitHub, and Victor is more than happy to help with the questions on those if you're interested on helping. Now let's see how this actually goes. We are 60 minutes into the call.
The topic that Paolo and I wanted to talk about is the PnP Core SDK. You might have heard this name before. We already briefly mentioned it. We really didn't really talk a lot about it or demo it actually. So this will be the first demo if Paolo can actually get into unmute and present, but let's see. Now, first of all, why are we building a PnP Core SDK? And SDK name kind of already spills the beans. It's like it's a library for you to use. Today we have, if you look at what we have today, we have PnP Core v3, so and PowerShell v3, which are our current highly used components and products. Meaning it's literally like millions of commandlets, thousands of actually 40,000 tenants a month using PnP Core. So it's massively being used. But these components are fairly old, meaning we started building those 6-7 years ago, Vesa, huh? So it's a long time ago. And now with CSOM 4.net standard, which is really, really close, we will actually make PnP Core and PowerShell again kind of cross-platform, and it will get like a little bit of a restart. But still, it is like a very big monolithic set of components. They have a lot of PnP Core has a ton of dependencies, so everyone has bumped into those DLL hell issues because we reference a very old DLL and you want something newer, and then you get into conflicts, etc. It's not really easy to embed in modern development patterns like dependency injection, for example. So it's kind of quite hard, and also quite hard to test and to refactor. But the reason why is because this has been kind of organically growing over like 6 years. There's a ton of good features, but this is hard to maintain. Now, .NET 5 is also around the corner. So I think that the current planned GA for the .NET 5 is November 10th this year, which will be like a unified .NET stack, unifying the regular .NET framework and .NET Core into one .NET stack, which will work on any device, any platform essentially, including inside the browser with Blazor WebAssembly. So the PnP Core SDK, the reason why is because we really want to be ready for .NET 5 and give you something that really works nicely in modern .NET based development on any device, any platform. And it will also give us a way to surely but slowly move features and capabilities from PnP Core into a new clean code base, because it's just too much work to otherwise kind of refactoring PnP Core would be like a massive project, and still you would end up with a lot of old legacy stuff in there. So that's why we started kind of from scratch. So roadmap wise, for H1 2020, so still this month, we are kind of focused on shipping preview versions of the PnP Core SDK, and we'll talk a bit about that in a second. But we're not releasing it, obviously. It's just preview. We're developing it right now. Vesa mentioned that we are hoping to get CSOM to that standard next week. Hopefully, let's see, June timeframe at least, which enables us for H2 of this calendar year to do like a version bump of PnP Core and PowerShell and ship them with .NET standard support. So we still have to kind of figure out how we will ship it. Will it be like a new package, or will it be kind of, for example, in the current PnP Core, you could package also add the core version of the .NET standard version of it. Still some questions to answer, but at least we definitely are committed to ship PnP Core and PowerShell based upon CSOM.NET standard, which will then enable you to use it in Azure Functions v3, for example, cross-platform Linux machines, whatever. So it kind of broadens the perspective and the usage scenarios for our core libraries. Now, in parallel, we'll keep on working on the PnP Core SDK, targeting a beta V1 still this calendar year, and then over time, PnP Core SDK will get bigger, will get more features, and will kind of combine things. So the older, let's say older PnP Core library will also use PnP Core SDK for certain tasks. I think that's a bit of the evolution. So those two will slowly but surely merge together at a certain point. But we keep on having both for a while because we definitely want to keep supporting both, especially because PnP Sites Core and PnP PowerShell are for SharePoint on-prem as well, whereas the PnP Core SDK only targets SharePoint Online. So that's why we definitely keep PnP Sites Core and PowerShell around. So I talked about a bit of the why, but you might ask yourself, like, what is it actually? What is PnP Core SDK? What does it mean? And I try to kind of frame it in one sentence. It's a .NET-based SDK that unites the breadth of Microsoft Graph with the depth of SharePoint REST. So essentially, you will get a development, an API, a model, domain model where you can develop against, and it will have all the SharePoint features that you are used to know today, to have today from either CSOM or, for example, from PnP.js. All the SharePoint features are there, combined with all the graph features that are kind of circling around SharePoint, which are somehow related to SharePoint. For example, if I have a team site, the team site is also connected to a team, then yeah, it's really easy for you to do team operations, add a new channel to your team, add a tab to your team, etc., post a message. So these things are as easy as, for example, adding a new list and a new column to that list. That's kind of the purpose and what we are aiming at. A unified, fluent API with a domain model built for model.NET development, async by default. I think there is, what else to say about it? We have previews already available. So if you want to look at the source code and try things out, there's ak.ms/pnp/core SDK where you can start finding and digging around in the code and reading about it, because also documentation, how to use it, but also definitely how to contribute to it. I'll come to that in a second as well. But just looking at the questions, is there anything that I need to address, or that we can address? Paolo's section will be coming. Anything to add from your side, Paolo? Yeah. Maybe
Let me try to share my screen and try to play the demo.
Right. Maybe go to source, SOC.
Yep.
Samples. Yeah, we can talk on that one. Yeah.
Let's take this one just to kind of, then the program see. Yep. And I'll let Paolo talk you through some of these things.
Okay, thank you. So, okay, either way works. So, as you can see, the overall idea of the PnP Core SDK is to provide a modern experience to .NET developers. That's why we decided to use the dependency injection model. And as you can see right here on line 35, we can configure a bunch of services. Some of them are custom services, like a service for authentication, another one to get an object that we call PnP context, which will be somehow the evolution of what we were used to call the context in the CSOM world, but it is a bigger context because it can give you access not only to the SharePoint Online part of the story, but also to the whole set of workloads that we have in Office 365 and through Microsoft Graph. As Bert already said, the idea is to have a graph-first library. So whenever you will execute any kind of request by default, we will try to use Microsoft Graph as the primary choice, and we will fall back on the SharePoint REST APIs only if it will be needed, for example, because we are trying to access a property or a functionality which is not yet available through Microsoft Graph. We can see that here we build through the dependency injection model the host builder, then we build the host, and then we start the host. And right after that, starting from line 80, we create a scope, which is not mandatory, but in this demo we do that. And using the context factory, the PnP context factory, we can easily create a PnP context to access a specific target site or team or group in Microsoft 365. For example, here we access a site, a modern team site, and by doing a context.web.get async, as you can see, we have the asynchronous model by default, we can get the web object loading the properties like title, list, and master page URL. Now, if you will make a request, for example, to get the title and the description of a site, that request will go through Microsoft Graph. If you will ask to get information like the master page URL, that one will require to go through the SharePoint REST API. As I said, the first option is always Microsoft Graph v1, but we also support internally through a flag, which is by default true, the capability to use the beta endpoint of Microsoft Graph if needed. So if you are targeting any of the endpoints which will need to rely on Microsoft Graph beta, we will do it automatically for you, switching from v1 to beta. And of course, if you don't want to do that, you can simply switch the default flag to false, and we will just rely on Graph v1 and SharePoint REST API. The interesting part of the story is that in the backend, we do all the requests through batching. So we will make batch requests targeting Graph and batch requests targeting SharePoint REST, so that we can improve the quality of your application and of your code, and we can reduce the probability to get throttled by the APIs because we are leveraging the batching. We can also leverage a language integrated query model to use this library. So you can, for example, make a query, a link query for a list or for some of the lists. You can use some extension methods like the load and the include that we created to let you retrieve all of the lists, including the items of those lists. And under recover, we will convert the link query into an actual query for the backend API, which will be again by default Graph or REST as a fallback. And you can also use, you can see in line 162 that we have some extension methods like the get by title, for example, so that we can somehow mimic the behavior and the code that we are already all used to use when we work with CSOM, so that even if this library will be completely based on Graph and SharePoint REST, from a developer experience and from a developer point of view, you can reuse the same model, the same syntax as before. For example, when you make a get by title, you can also include some properties that you want to select through the open data query that will be executed in the backend for you. And as such, it is, we think, a really powerful library, which step by step we will improve. Right now, this is just a preview, as Bert already said, but the overall goal is to give you a library which will let you develop solution in any kind of platform, like Blazor, ASP.NET Core, and so on and so forth. Not only reading data, but now we will not dig into any single functionality, but you can also use this library to add new items, update items, and do stuff like that. So you can fully interact with the Microsoft 365 platform, starting most likely from SharePoint Online, but not only targeting SharePoint Online, but also Microsoft Teams, Azure Active Directory, and all the other workloads which are available. I think that's enough, in my opinion, based on the context in which we are using the code from GitHub. But if you want to add something else, Bert, of course, feel free to.
I think there was a question about contributing from Shina Kislai. I think we're in a pretty early stage here, but we definitely would like to see contributors. So contributing, I said, we are in early start of this project, meaning that we don't have a lot of stuff in there yet. So we need contributors. For that, we actually focus our documentation initially on contributors. So if you go to that link, you will find contributor documentation. Essentially, we'll try to explain how things work and how you as a contributor can extend the models that we have, and just kind of giving you that kind of getting started information.
So here's the contribution documentation. So.
Yep, that's the documentation, and it kind of really explains in fairly much depth actually how it works. So like that iWeb, what does it mean? How you build it? What are the objects that we have? How do you add additional model classes? You can have a look at it. I think it's also just a good read to understand how you can build things, and definitely wanting to get feedback there as well. Do you feel this is good, not good? Do you have other ideas? Feel free to let us know there. But this should help you get started if you want to contribute. Now, I think it's important that we, if you really want to contribute, that you let us know upfront, ideally, especially if you want to add additional model classes. So, for example, I know like Yannick Plainvaux is working on adding content type and field support. You already did a couple of PRs, and these emerged, so thanks for that, Yannick. Now, if there's 5 people starting to work on something similar, then that would be like a shame. So it would be kind of a pity of because you get similar work. So if you want to contribute, maybe just reach out to us or create an issue in the issue list saying like, hey, I want to work on this particular area. Then we can agree as a team on who does what so that we don't do overlapping work. Also, if you're trying to contribute and reading this documentation and you get stuck, more than happy to explain things, get into a call with you, explain how it works, and help improve documentation. I think the end goal is that this is fairly clear for everyone contributing, and that people can just jump in and start contributing to this project. Now, what are we looking for type of contributions? The main thing is extending the model. So SharePoint is pretty big. We only cover a little part of it today. Same with Graph. We cover a fairly decent piece of the Teams functionality, but not everything. So first big task is extending the model so it becomes more feature-rich and usable. There's other areas to contribute as well. For example, we want to automate things. So if you're good at GitHub Actions and want to, for example, write a GitHub action that auto-generates this documentation when we push a new article update, I would love to have that. So there's an area around automation, packaging that is where you can contribute. Samples, definitely samples. Like using the library in Blazor, for example, would be a really cool example to see. I think last week Tommy showed Blazor in action already, but having like this library being used somewhere pretty cool, or on a mobile application, a Xamarin app. So there's our ASP.NET Core app. There are Modern.NET development samples where this can be integrated. So looking for those. Documentation, updates, testing. We have a really cool testing system. Paolo, I think you can agree on that. So we have like already like 170 test cases. We actually wanted to show that in a demo, but we can't today, which is a pity. Actually, Vesa, can you click on writing tests?
Yep.
Yep. Mm-hmm. All right. So this is an old screenshot, but today we have like 170 test cases, and they run in around 5 seconds on my machine. Because we have an offline concept, so we have a custom kind of mocking concept where you can do a live test, and then we record the response, and then later on that test will be saved with the response. So like server side, if you do a commit today, if you push a change or do a PR, you will see that we automatically run all test cases against your PR in offline mode using that response file. So that also allows you as a developer to really refactor things without the risk of breaking things, because the test cases will really help you keep quality high.
And let me say, Bert, that we also have a requirement that any new contribution will also include tests, so that we can easily and with an automated model test new functionalities, new contributions, and keep the library solid and fully available to the people using it. So the idea we have in our mind that right now every single new functionality will have a full testability. That's the idea.
Correct. So today we are at 80% plus test coverage, and we aim to get higher. And to reach that bar, the contributions have to also include test cases. Now, if you find it hard to write the test case, again, more than happy to help explain things and show how things work. There is learning for everyone on this, and also, again, definitely wanting to listen to feedback, good ideas around model.NET development. We did our best, but there's always other good ideas out there, good patterns that can be used. So feel free to just reach out to us and let us know using the issue list or direct communication. Anything will work.
Covering what we're planning to do with the PnP Core, the Graph first API is really, really cool as well. We'll get this one and this recording out anyway within 24 hours because I've been able to record my screen locally. So that will be available in the Microsoft 365 and SharePoint community PnP YouTube channel within 24 hours. The next M365 General Dev call will be in June 25th, and we'll schedule some of the planned demos from here to that call. Let's see what works for Stefan and Erwin. And then the next SharePoint Framework call is a week from now in 18th. The next monthly community call is in July 14th. In general, we have a lot of community calls available. If you're interested in joining this, join some of them based on your availability and interest. All of these community calls are recorded, and we're looking into actually splitting all of the demos in these community calls in more and more as an individual demo. So you can more easily find the interesting bits and pieces for you rather than being forced to join on all of the calls in the case you're actually finding something useful. Again, we do apologize the technical issues we've been having this week. If you joined on the Tuesday's calls, the monthly community call, the recording of that call is actually super clean. So go to the YouTube channel, check out the recording. It actually demonstrates nicely what are we planning to do with the modern SharePoint search. It also talks about the timelines related on that one as well. So really cool stuff from that perspective. But thank you for this one. If there's in general feedback or input what you want to share, please reach out in social media and let us know. Your input is super, super important. And obviously the input of please fix the Microsoft Teams. We heard about that one. Yes, we're working on it. So hopefully this was one-time exception or one-time week within this year when we're having these issues. But have a great rest of the week, and we'll be definitely in touch. Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.